Hello everybody, welcome back to One Chord a Week. I'm afraid today's video is one of the very last ones in this series, but you know, all good things come to an end at one point or another. But I think we had a great time with this whole series, and if you've watched the whole thing and you studied all the chords that I gave you, I think you're well beyond what you would have hoped for when you started playing the guitar. You know, how many chords should I know? Well, now you know. I think it's about 40 videos in this series, so this should get you going. But I am thinking of any chord that I might have forgotten about or I might have left behind, but right now I can't think of any. There's going to be one video next week about altered dominant chords, which is something I've been putting off because, you know, it's going to be a heavy video, and it's going to unite about 7 or 8 chords within one video, and I'm trying to make sure that you have all the tools you need to truly understand that video. But after that, I don't think there's any more chords left, or if there are, they're probably not worth your time and trouble right now. You know, then of course I still consider all my videos just a simple foundation for you. They're not the ultimate. I don't pretend to have all the answers, that's for sure, but these videos are to inspire you. And I think all these videos on chords not only will inspire you, but it will actually give you all the tools that you need to get into harmony and chord progressions, and to spice up your songs, and to, you know, go deeper with the emotions that chords can carry within them. So without further ado, let's begin with today's chord. Today's chord is a dominant 13th sus4 chord. It's nothing new for you if you've been following this series. We looked at the 7 sus4. Here's a link for that. That's kind of the starting point for this whole thing. And then we looked at the 9 sus4 chord, which again is the next step up. It's the same chord with an extra 9th, and here's a link to that. And today is the final one of the series, which is the 13th sus4, which is the same thing as the 7 and the 9th plus a 13th. And the 13th is just a 6th. As far as uses go, if you watched all the other videos, you already know about all this. You'll find it in jazz, of course, because jazz is rich in chords and harmony. You'll find it in fusion, and you'll find it in all kinds of stuff, actually, because complex chords like this sometimes are given to you in a piece of music, and you might not recognize them because maybe they're split up between different instruments. If you look at an orchestra score, you might find that all the notes played by all the instruments will give you this sound. It's quite a beautiful sound, and we'll look at that in a second. But it is a chord that I suggest you know, just check it out, because you never know. It is one chord that I left behind many times when I, you know, through my waves of chord studies. And when I discovered it, I was very pleasantly surprised. And so I'm going to give it to you, and then you'll decide for yourself. Because the name of this chord is 13 sus4, you might wonder what happens to the 11th, because we went from 7 sus4 to 9 sus4 straight to 13 sus4. The reason there's no 11 sus4 is because the 11th is the 4th. So the 11th has been present throughout these chords as the sus4. All right, so that's why there's no 11 sus4 chord, and that's why even though we are in a 13th chord, we don't have to worry about the 11th preceding the 13th, because it's already taken care of by the 4. If you don't know about sus4 chords, this is one triad you have to understand and learn. It's non-negotiable. It's not like maybe this chord where it's kind of an extra thing and it's beautiful, but you know, probably not the most common in the world. But sus4 chords you have to know. So check this one out. And while you're at it, also look at the sus2 chord. All right, those are very important, extremely important in all kinds of music. Anyway, going back to the formula, we start with the root C, and then we proceed with the sus4 triad, which is C, then we have the perfect 4th F, and the perfect 5th G. That's our sus4 triad, the building block for this chord. Then the next note will be the flat 7 or minor 7th, which in the case of C is B flat. Now this we've seen many times with all dominant chords and minor 7th chords, so I think you've got it. So right now we're up to a 7 sus4 chord, which is root, 4th, 5th, and minor 7th. On top of that, we're going to add the extensions. The first one in a 13th chord will be the 9th, which is a D, which is the same as a major 2nd. Then we would have the 11th, but again, we've already played it as the sus4. So we move straight up to the 13th, which is a major 6th. It's the same thing. 13 and 6 are the same, and it's an A. So all together again, we have root C, the sus4 or perfect 4th F, the perfect 5th G, the minor 7th B flat, the 9th which is the same as a major second D, and the 13th or major sixth A. These are all the notes. As you can see, there's quite a few notes in this chord, and the only note that's actually not present is the E, and we'll look more at that in a second in the sound section, so let's check it out. It's pretty beautiful. The 13th sus4 is kind of airy and hopeful. I really like the chord, and it's a kind of a new discovery for me. Probably just the last couple of years I really gotten into it, and I really enjoy just making a pad of it, or maybe just a very simple rhythm with arpeggios, maybe with long reverbs, you know, and just play over it. And I'll tell you what I play in the next section on scales, but still is a beautiful sound and something you can use. Functionally, I use it as a 5-1. I don't use it as the tritone substitution that we looked at before in other videos. This one to me really resolves to the 1. So if I'm playing C 13 sus4, I would resolve to F. So you get this feeling of openness, but also resolution. Okay, and it's a beautiful sounding chord, really. It's blender, or more bland, I don't know the right word for it, but certainly it is softer than a regular dominant 7th chord. This is softer and richer, and I think it offers many more possibilities, so it's really a beautiful chord. And one thing about the note that's missing is a strange note, because sus4 chords, as you know, are neither major nor minor. And so if you look at the formula again from the previous section, you see that you have a C, a D, which is the 9th, no E, so there's no third, but then we have F, G, A, and B flat. So the only doubt we can have about this chord, if it's major or minor. But because the function of this chord is really a substitution for a dominant chord, even though we play like this, and there's no E here because the chord doesn't have a major third, we still consider it, with no doubts about it, we consider it a dominant chord. So underneath this chord we can assume and imagine a major third. This becomes important, right, you know, after we looked at how we played, we go into the scale section and we'll kind of have to talk about this a little bit. All right, so let's move on to the 3 fingerings so you can then play it and practice with it. So let me give you 3 fingerings for this beautiful chord. They're very easy to play. You'll have no issue at all with them. And the first one is the one I showed you before. It's basically a big bar on the 3rd fret. We don't play the 6th string, but then we go 3, 3, 3, 3. Okay, see, the middle strings are all on the 3rd fret. And these notes are C, the root, F, the sus4. We have B flat, which is the minor 7th, we have the D, which is the 9th, and then we have the A, which is the 13th. As you can see, there's no G, but you already know that. You already know that in a big chord, the G or the perfect 5th is the first note to go. We've looked at that many, many times throughout this series of videos, and it's something you can always keep in mind. If you're out of fingers, the G or perfect 5th is the first to go, okay? In this specific chord, there's another note that you could lose, and we're going to look at that right now in the next position, which is kind of midway through the neck. This is an inversion, so we start with B flat here on the 8th fret of the 4th string, which is the minor 7th. Then we go down to the 5th fret on the 3rd string, that's our root C. Then we have F, which is the 4th. And then we have A again, which is of course the 13th. And you can see in this specific chord we're missing 2 notes. We're only playing 4, and they're the ones you would expect. The first one is of course the 5th. There's no G here, but there's also no D. And the reason is that when you have extensions, you don't have to actually play all of them. So we have a 13th, and it doesn't mean that we have to play the 9th. We can play the 9th like we did here, or we can avoid the 9th like we're doing here. Of course, it's a different sound, but it's still the same function, okay? And we looked at this many times. You can check out the major 13th chord. Here's a link. I think it's the last one I have available for this video. But you know, all the big chords that we saw, the 11th chords and the 13th chords, you'll see that extensions, you don't have to put them all into the chord. As a matter of fact, sometimes they don't even sound that good when you cram them all in. All right, and finally, let's move up to the final position. And we'll play it here on the 8th fret of the 6th string. You know, I'm kind of fond of this position for teaching beginners and intermediate students. So we start with the root, this is a C on the 8th fret of the 6th string. We skip the 5th string, and then we play the B flat right below it on the 4th string, same 8th fret. Then we stretch the little finger just a little bit out, and here we play the F, which is the 4th, and below it is an A, which is the 13th. So all together. Now you'll notice that if I stretch my finger just a little more, I can even grab the 9th here, the D. So feel free to do that. But you don't have to. So if you have a hard time with the little finger, or you simply don't like that high D there, you can drop it. So here's the position without the D, or with. They're both, of course, valid fingerings. Let's talk about scales now. The 13th sus4 chord is a big chord, and as all big chords, they influence the scales a lot more than smaller chords, but just simply because they have so many notes within them. And in this case, there really is only one scale that will work according to the function of the chord, which is the mixolydian scale. I will still give you two of them, but strictly speaking, because we consider this chord to be a dominant chord, even if there's no third, we can assume that it's a major third. And in that case, there's only one scale that will fit, because the chord plus the assumed third actually gives you the full scale. And that scale is the mixolydian scale. And the mixolydian scale is a scale that is a major scale, of course, with a flat 7th. Like that. And this scale, of course, has the root, the second, which is the 9th. It has a third, which the chord doesn't have, but then it has the 4th of the sus4, the 5th of the chord, the A, which is the 13th of this chord, and then we have the B flat, which is the one that makes it dominant, and then again a C. So all the notes of the chord are included in the scale, and the scale also has an E on top of it, but that E, even though it's not in the chord, is 100% clear that belongs to the chord, because the function of this chord is a dominant function, and dominant functions with 7th chords imply a major triad. All right, so this is actually the only scale you can use, but it's not the only scale you could use, so to speak. And there's another option, which is, let's pretend that the sus4 really truly frees us up for using whatever third we want, because the 4th replaces the 3rd. Even though the function tells us that we should be using a dominant chord, let's pretend that we don't know the function, we just hear this sound. And we can think, wow, I wonder if this could work. Making it minor. And the minor scale, that is basically a mixolydian scale with a minor third, is called the Dorian scale. So I will just put it out there and you can use it, but make sure that you understand that the function for this chord, it's actually a dominant function, which means that somewhere down the line or before this chord in your progression, you probably will have encountered a major third, or the note that makes this major. So be careful with what you're about to do, which is playing it as if it were kind of a minor thing, but it does work. So the Dorian scale has the same notes as the mixolydian scale, but the third is different. But because this chord doesn't have a third, we can kind of, you know, squeeze it in, and it does sound pretty good actually. Just be careful of what comes before the chord and what comes after it, because even though this chord does not have an E or an E flat, it doesn't mean that your chord progression doesn't have it. This is it for the 13th sus4 chord. If you've gotten this far, congratulations, you've watched a whole bunch of videos in this series. If you're new to the series or to the channel and you enjoyed the videos, please subscribe, like and comment. It's extremely important for me to reach more and more people with them. And I will feel that I haven't wasted all the hundreds of hours that I put into this series, because it is my hope that one day a kid somewhere around the world, or who knows how many years in the future, will turn on her computer and find this strange 13th sus4 chord and be inspired to make some great music, and then we'll be the ones watching her channel and learning new things. So if you can spread some love, it would be very much appreciated. Other than that, I will see you next week with at least one more chord of the 1 chord a week series. Bye bye.